Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking what I like to call a perfect storm. We're diving right into the physical, mental, and digital traps that modern teenagers are completely caught up in right now. By breaking down the latest research, we're going to uncover what is really exhausting the adolescent mind. Let's kick things off with a pretty crucial question. It's one parents, teachers, and doctors are all asking right now. How exactly can the most connected, technologically advanced generation in human history just be running on completely empty? You see it in classrooms, you see it at home. This deep, pervasive exhaustion. 4.8 hours. Let that number really sink in for a second. That is the average amount of time teenagers spend on social media every single day. I mean, think about that. That's nearly a third of their waking life dedicated just to scrolling, liking, and comparing. It's a massive digital weight, and honestly, sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. To make sense of this massive lifestyle crisis, we've organized the source material into a clear roadmap. We'll hit 1, the digital and hustle trap; 2, fuel, diets, and chemical copes; 3, the science of sleep debt; 4, barriers to seeking help; and 5, reclaiming modern teen health. All right, let's jump into section 1, the digital and hustle trap. So, World Health Organization data reveals this really critical threshold. 11% of teens now display problematic, basically addiction like symptoms towards social media. And to be clear, this goes way beyond just heavy use. We're talking about a literal inability to stop, going through actual withdrawal symptoms, and just completely neglecting real world life. And what's fascinating is the stark gender divide within this trap. Girls face a much higher risk of social media dependency, constantly battling peer comparison and body image distortion. Boys, on the other hand, they lean heavily toward problematic gaming. Roughly 12% of all adolescent boys are at risk of gaming habits that actively tank their life satisfaction. But, the digital world isn't the only pressure cooker here. When you combine that constant online connection with modern hustle culture, that relentless societal demand to optimize everything, volunteer, and build the absolute perfect college resume, the dominoes just start falling. A full third of American teens report feeling genuinely burnout. They're completely depleted right when they should be at their most vibrant. Let's move on to section 2, fuel, diets, and chemical copes. So, how exactly do exhausted teenagers try to survive all this burnout? Usually by making some pretty massive lifestyle mistakes. Reaching for highly caffeinated energy drinks or, chugging a coffee on an empty stomach instead of grabbing actual water and whole foods feels like a quick fix, right? But this fake energy just spikes their blood sugar, triggers morning anxiety, and basically guarantees a brutal midday crash. It's super easy to just stare at the data, but listen to this actual quote from a teenager. "No, I don't like broccoli. I do not like broccoli at all." It's kind of funny, but it perfectly captures the reality. When you're rushing between school, sports, and tons of homework, processed convenience food wins every time. Broccoli literally doesn't stand a chance against a drive-thru. But skipping the greens has some really severe consequences. The dietary guidelines for Americans flag that teens, especially girls, are critically deficient in fundamental nutrients. We're talking protein, iron, magnesium, folate, and B vitamins like B6 and B12. And this matters immensely because adolescence is their most rapid window of physical and brain development. Starving a developing brain of B12 directly fuels that overwhelming fatigue we were just talking about. Then you have the chemical copes. A lot of young adults reach for a vape, believing it's just this harmless little stress reliever. The reality does the exact opposite. It floods their system with highly addictive nicotine, damages delicate lung tissue, and literally traps their developing brain in this permanent, heightened state of anxiety and impulsiveness. All right, on to section 3, the science of sleep debt. To truly get why teens are so exhausted, we absolutely have to talk about something called phase delay. This isn't just teenagers being stubborn or lazy. It's a completely unavoidable biological shift that happens during puberty. Basically, their brains simply do not release the sleep hormone, melatonin, until up to 2 hours later than adults do. Biologically speaking, they physically cannot fall asleep at what we'd call a normal hour. Now, take that biology and put it on a direct collision course with a 7 a.m. school bell. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine actually recommends 8 to 10 hours of sleep for teens. But because they naturally fall asleep later and then are forced awake drastically early for school, they're averaging barely 7 hours. Their natural biology is literally being crushed by our modern school schedules. Add smartphones to the mix, and it gets so much worse. Blue light from that late night scrolling suppresses their already delayed melatonin even further. Astonishingly, 10% of teens check their phones more than 10 times a single night. And then when they try to sleep until noon on the weekends just to survive, it completely shatters their circadian rhythm. It traps them in a catastrophic cycle of chronic sleep debt, anxiety, and plummeting grades. Section 4. Barriers to seeking help. I'd rather die than people spreading rumors about me. That is a verbatim quote from an adolescent in a South African clinic study. And man, it is heartbreakingly clear. For a teenager, the terrifying threat of community gossip, peer ridicule, or adult judgment vastly outweighs their own physical or mental health care needs. The barriers they face are incredibly intimidating. Source data reveals that teens delay getting help because they essentially have to run a gauntlet. We're talking judgmental adults, healthcare workers who lack youth training, and intense peer stigma, like the completely false community assumption that just walking into a clinic means you must have HIV. Add in clinic hours that perfectly overlap with the school day, and well, it's no wonder they just suffer in silence. Finally, Section 5, Reclaiming Modern Teen Health. Okay, here is where we can actually take action. Families can start breaking this cycle today with a few practical steps. First, set some boundaries. Enforce screen time limits on apps and build active digital detox routines. Second, swap out that fake energy. Replace those processed smoothies and energy drinks with whole fruits and real hydration. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, protect the sleep window. Establish a consistent schedule between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. and enforce it, even on weekends, so they can finally reset that biological clock. But hey, families really can't do this alone. The World Health Organization stresses that we need systemic, community-level action. Schools need to actively embed digital literacy into their education. We have to train healthcare providers to be strictly empathetic and totally non-judgmental. We need to hold social media platforms accountable and enforce age restrictions. But above all, we need to promote open, empathetic dialogue at home, where teens feel safe speaking freely. So, armed with all this understanding of the digital, nutritional, and biological realities our youth are facing right now, I'll leave you with this final thought. What immediate change can you foster today to help a teenager reclaim their health and their potential? The perfect storm is absolutely raging, but with structured boundaries and genuine, non-judgmental empathy, we can for sure guide them safely through it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.